So there have been over 70 changes in this huge Pauper Cube update from all the sets that I've missed since being away. So in this video what we're going to be doing is going over all the different cards that I've put into the cube, what I've taken out of the cube, and see where we're going to be going forward, but I'm definitely happy with the changes. Hello and welcome to Life Begins at 20. My name's Mark and thank you so much for joining me, and if this is your first time here, welcome, and if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss out on any of my future content, because again the content's now going to be starting up again, so you definitely don't want to be missing out on what's coming in the future. So just a quick announcement before we get into the actual video itself. As many of you may know if you follow me on the social media platforms and also on the community tab within YouTube as well, I've created a website which I'll link to you in the description below as well. So there is going to be where I post all of the cube related content, and hopefully as well that's where the Pauper content's going to go once I actually start making it. And it just means you've got a hub there if you wanted to go through all the different articles. There's going to be a written version of this video alongside the top 5 cards from Core Set 2020 that's also been written up as well. I'm working my way through the back catalogue just to kind of giving you written versions so you can refer back to them as well. So if you want to check that out, it's just www.lifebeginsat20.co.uk. So that's a great place to go if you want to just specifically find certain parts of the cube content, whether you want the build along, top X cards from each set. And they're all broken down into categories as well, so you can find what it is you want to, and it can just a nice way to refer back to them rather than having to scroll through all the different videos on YouTube as well. So it'd be great if you could go and check that out. So as many of you know, I've missed about 7 or 8 sets of Magic the Gathering since I've been away, and I wasn't expecting there to be anywhere near the number of cards going into my Pauper Cube that have done. I mean, there's over 70 changes. Granted, not all of the changes are from the current sets that I've missed. There are some cards that have come in to help with archetypes to kind of bring them all together from older sets. But I mean, Modern Horizons was a phenomenal set. Absolutely phenomenal. I think there's over 10, definitely over 10 cards from that have gone into this cube. So we'll go through in the video how I've made all these changes, the different things that are going on in the actual archetype as well, because green has definitely got a different archetype change overall. There's going to be colour pie changes as well, so I'll go through everything step by step, kind of talking about all the different cuts, overview of why I've made the cuts, go through each of the individual cards that have come in as well, and just show you all the changes. Plus I may have pimped out a few of the cards as well, which I'll show you at the end. But just before we get stuck in, let me know in the comment section below as well, are you someone that likes to pimp out your cube and pick up foils and really kind of, or promo versions of the card? I'd be really interested to find out, so let us know in the comment section below if that's something that you like to do. So without any further ado, let's get stuck in. So to start this update, what I wanted to do was actually move some cards that are appearing in different slots to actually where they've been played the most from all the games that I've been playing, and that's the kind of the thing I wanted to do here, so that there have been a few cards that have come from different guilds that might actually be better off in the mono colours because that's where they're predominantly being played. And that's something that I went through. Plus it also meant that I could actually remove out the shard colours as well, because they was something that just weren't being picked up at all. And during these changes I also wanted to make sure there was only one artifact or Phyrexian card for each colour in the colourless section as well, to keep that even. So a few moves and cuts were made to do this. And some of the other cuts here were to help reduce the cube down to 450 cards overall with all the additions that have been made. I've taken out the least used of the artifacts, and, well, Cradle of the Accursed didn't perform as well as I'd hoped. Some of you may well be questioning Shimmering Grotto, and it wasn't a card that was underperforming by any stretch of the imagination. It was just a choice due to having plenty of fixing within the cube already. I didn't think it would end up being missed that much in the end, so I'll certainly keep an eye on that over the next few months to see whether something like that needs to come back in again. So there are the big changes to the colour pie, just to kind of put some cards in the right slots and really open up the rest of the cube. So I've made a load of the cuts as well there, which have made room for all of the additions that we're going through now. So to start off with, we're going to go through in colour order, starting off with white. So onto the first of the colours in white, and there was a big change around in the actual creature base here. As you may know, there may have been a soldier kind of sub-theme archetype within the cube. The issue was that If you didn't manage to get any of the mini Lord cards, being either Veteran Armorsmith or Veteran Swordsmith, for the valuable increase to either toughness or power, you often felt a little underwhelmed with the power of the attacking prowess of white. So as a result, I felt I needed to change that so the creature's power level was higher without the need of these lords. This meant a lot of the soldiers were taken out and replaced with flyers or better overall creatures that can make the breakthrough that white needed on a stalled board. Just to mention, blue was also given some more flyers as well to help kind of build that blue-white flyers archetype on top. So in terms of the additions to white, there have been 14 in total, which is quite a big change. And I'm very, very excited to see how they perform, so let's find out what they are. So first of the new additions in white is Healer's Hawk, and while it's not as strong as War Falcon on base stats that was in the cube, it's still a great evasive 1-drop, where the lifelink causing a 2-point swing can certainly matter. This has no downside or inability to attack either, so that is definitely a plus. Next up, we've got Law Rune Enforcer, and this was just a straight upgrade for Gold Meadow Harrier. The extra toughness and the cost of tapping being generic mana was a big plus here, and there is an argument that it can only tap creatures with cost 2 or more, but realistically, you shouldn't need to tap down a 1-drop anyway. I've toyed with this card a few times in the cube, and it's an aggressive 2-drop being a 3/1, plus in a white weenies or flyers deck, which I'm trying to support a lot more now, it'll fit in perfectly, and it'll certainly enable to get over the top with the battalion trigger easily enough as well. Next up, we've got Silverbeak Griffin, and this is an evasive 2/2 for 2 that fits perfectly into the aggressive white deck alongside the potential blue-white flyers deck too. The only downside is the white-white mana cost rather than having a generic portion, but it shouldn't really matter too much. Next up, we've got ourselves the first of our 2 trusted Pegasuses in the cube, and that is Heavenly Quiln. These just help us get over the top of the defense as well with our on-the-ground creatures to just do more damage. The 2/2 evasive body is more than fine for the attack trigger as well, and it can certainly help get in for that extra point of damage over the course of the game. Next up, we've got Martyr's Soul, and this is definitely a card that I really do like the look of. You can either make the 3/2 body cheaper with Convoke, making it great value, or if you manage to cast it without tapping any lands at all, it's a 5/4, which is a great threat for a white weenie deck. And here we are is the second of our trusted Pegasuses, and like I said with the Heavenly Kiln, this should do a great job for us, and I do like it in foil. It does look great. Next up, we've got ourselves Rock's Veteran, and this 4-drop does a lot for the White Weenies deck for sure. The 2/4 body isn't the best, but it attacks as a 3/4, and giving all of our other creatures a +1/+0 can really help get in more damage or even trade up with our opponent's blockers. The fact that he also takes out a blocker on attack too makes for a great potential creature. I certainly think having this and Territorial Hammerskull in the same deck could make for some explosive attack steps. Next up, we've got Squad Captain, and this is a card I was a fan of at the top on end of white from Core Set 2020, and could potentially be a fatty that white has been looking for all this time. This could easily come out as a 6/6 Vigilance for 5, plus with Blink in the cube you can certainly make her larger when you have a wider board presence. Onto the spells now, and first up we've got Ephemerate. I wanted to introduce a little more blink into the cube than I previously had, and this card from Modern Horizons is fantastic. Not only for protection for your creatures, but also for value too. Being able to blink a creature for another token, a scry, or even drawing cards with the likes of Muldrifter could be amazing. Plus, having the rebound to do it all over again just means you're going to get extra value out of it as well. This is certainly making a big splash in Constructed Pauper and deserves a spot in the cube. Next up, we've got Borrowed Grace, and this is a nice little combat trick for white, which players preferred over Holy Light in my playgroup. This provides a bigger power swing, plus if you have extra mana, the potential to save more of your creatures too. Next up, we've got another card from Modern Horizons, and that is Settle Beyond Reality. This at worst gives us the ability to remove a big threat of the opponents from the game with the exile trigger there, but if you have the ability to blink a creature on top for value, it becomes an even better card. Certainly one I wanted to test out, plus the artwork too looks amazing. I mean, that just looks so good in foil. Moving on to the enchantments now, and we're adding 2 into the cube here. First up is Cartouche of Solidarity, and I've introduced this alongside Ethereal Armor. So the Cartouche is realistically giving your creature +1/+1 and first strike, plus an extra body on top, which is a great value. Then you got Ethereal Armor, which is one of the cards that's kind of been in and out of the cube quite a lot. I'm supporting white-green enchantments, and this was just a nice way of the biggest payoff that we could possibly have. So it gets +1/+1 and first strike for each enchantment, and with the amount of enchantments I've added into green as well, it just means I can end up getting a lot bigger creatures that are going to be doing significantly more damage. So there we have all the additions in white, and as you could probably tell, there were more additions than there were cuts. And just to mention, that is across the board. All of the monocolours got more cards added into them that were taken out, and the cuts were then made with the underperforming cards, realistically, from the colourless section, the couple of lands that were taken out, and also the Phyrexian cards, just to kind of really make sure that there was only one of each of them, so it was kind of parity over the whole of the cube there. So you're going to see that across the board. So let's find out what we did in blue. So like the rest of the colours, blue got a massive upgrade in the terms of creature power over the course of these new sets, and there were a couple of spells as well, so they did get treated there, but let's face it, it's harder for blue spells to get into the cube because they'd have to be so good, because the already existing spells are fantastic. So let's find out what the cuts were. Some of you may well be questioning Peregrine Drake's cut, especially with trying to make a blue-white flyers kind of deck in there, and I just wanted to get away from that card and get some better 5-drops that don't require you to have a follow-up if you're top decking for value. Plus a little balancing here too was always going to be a good effect. I mean, it's banned in Pauper Constructed for a reason. While it doesn't perform quite as well as it does in Constructed, it's still a pretty powerful card, especially if that's your turn 5 play, to really kind of ramp out the board quickly. And realistically, there were just some cards there that I think would have performed better and provided more value overall, so that's why I've taken it out, to kind of give it a little bit more impact. Spells wise, again, like I mentioned earlier, there wasn't a huge amount of cuts needed or changes needed because blue's spells are just so good. We've got 3 new spells coming in, so we did have to make 3 cuts in there, but I think they are cuts for the better. So blue got itself 15 new cards here, which is, again, quite a substantial amount, so let's find out what they are. So first up, of all of the major additions that are into blue, we've got ourselves probably the best card from Modern Horizons, and that is Fairy Seer. A 1-mana 1/1 evasive flying creature with a scry 2 when it enters the battlefield is fantastic. Plus the fact it's fairy can't be underestimated. Spellstutter Sprite in the cube has plenty of 1-mana targets, but have this out and it becomes even more of a threat. Certainly wouldn't have any issue of bouncing this back to my hand to replay it later on either. Next up, we've got Wall of Runes, and while the Enter the Battlefield trigger isn't quite as good as Fairy Seer, I certainly can't complain about it either in a 1-drop. It's a great defender for a control deck, and with the Scry to help you make your next draw better, it's certainly a solid card that needed to come in. Next up, we have the Loyal Pegasus of blue in the form of Aerial Guide, and it's just going to help get a little bit more reach in terms of damage with our creatures, and if you manage to get the looting trigger from one of your other creatures as well when it's picked up, for example, it's got the ninjutsu trigger out of it, or it's managed to get, you know, Saltwater Stalwart, which is in the cube as well, that's going to be an addition, that's just going to be even better. Next up, we've got Cloudkin Seer, and this is definitely one of my favourite cards from Core Set 2020, and for good reason. A 2/1 evasive creature that replaces itself is great value. Plus, with Blink and Bounce in the cube, you can get even more value out of this card. Next up, we've got Wormfang Drake, and it's a 3/4 flyer for 3. When it comes into play, you have to sacrifice it unless you remove a creature you control other than it from the game, and when it leaves play, return the removed card under its play under its control. So it's just a good way to potentially get yourself a bigger, powerful creature for that 3 mana, and if you want to play a little bit of shenanigans in terms of bouncing and blinking stuff away, then you're going to get even more value out of this as well. Plus, really do like how it looks with the foil, with the old school foils there. Next up, we've got Avon Fleetwing, and here we've got ourselves a 4-mana 2/2 flyer with Hexproof. So Hexproof is a really big thing within the queue as well, and I just think it's a great evasive creature. Your opponents will have to literally find something to block to get rid of it, and if you end up putting, say, an enchantment or a pump spell on top of it, it's just going to do some serious work. Next up, we've got Saltwater Stalwart, and I'm just a big fan of looting effects. And this 2/4 creature gives the opponent something to think about when it attacks. A good blocker, and with the ways to get creatures through with either giving them flying or bouncing away the blockers, he's someone I'm expecting to provide some value over the course of the game. So next up, we've got Mnemonic Wall, and to be able to get back a much needed counter spell or potentially a burn spell to finish off the game is something I really like on this great defensive body. This is a card with the addition of blink spells in the cube that can provide some real value to a spell's matter deck over the course of the game. Next up, we've got Pondering Mage, and being able to get access to a second ponder on a stick that is a decent attacker and blocker is certainly hard to turn down. Blinking or replaying this will certainly be rewarded over the course of the game, especially if you can do it multiple times. And the last of the creatures is Soul of the Rapids, another solid evasive attacking threat in blue, which is certainly hard to remove with hexproof. It's a perfect curve topper for that blue-white Flyers deck. Onto the spells now, and we're starting off with Curfew. This is a great way to protect one of our creatures, make your opponent replay a threat, or bring one of our value creatures back to replaying it. Potentially 2 options at the same time, all for 1 mana, sounds good to me, and that's versatility I like in a card. Next up, we've got Withdraw, and I mean that foiling does look really nice. I do like the old school foils, I must admit. So with Withdraw here, we're potentially bouncing 1 or 2 creatures back to your opponent's hand for 2 mana, which sounds perfectly good to me, and if they can't pay the 1. Or it's a great way to protect a couple of your own creatures as well, which makes it another versatile card in that type of deck. Next up, we've got Reign of Revelation, and again, I picked up a load of the foils from this. It just looks so nice. Instant speed card draw, allowing us to see 3 cards and only needing to discard 1. It's a great way to refuel and lose an unwanted card. Next up, we've got Rush of Knowledge, and again, old school foils just look so nice. And this is another solid card draw spell that has the potential to draw you a lot of cards in the right deck. It's certainly potential to be a dud as well, but explosive on the right board if you've got yourself a big creature out. And then last of all, we've got ourselves Cartouche of Knowledge, and it's another enchantment to give a creature some evasion and +1/+1. While it's not as much of a buff compared to One with the Wind and Spectral Flight already in the cube, this does replace itself, which is a plus. Definitely some exciting additions there that I'm looking forward to see. Plus, there'll be a couple in there which are kind of in for testing that I just want to see how they perform. They may end up coming out, especially with the new sets coming out fairly soon. So just see what kind of things aren't working, and maybe there'll be something in there that'll just bring it out straight away. Let's get on to black. So as you've probably guessed, black did get a bit of an overhaul too. I just kind of wanted to make black aggro more impactful and actually get through for some damage, which it was struggling to do compared to that of red and white colours in the cube. I needed to go back and make sure I had creatures with more evasion to be able to deal some damage, hence the introduction of more shadow, menace and fear creatures that you'll see in the additions. So in terms of the spells, I got rid of a couple here that were slightly underperforming and actually managed to put in some new removal spells into black that were absolutely fantastic. Not that black didn't have a great selection of removal spells at all. On the contrary, these are just kind of helping to add a couple of different variations in there and really kind of push the power level up of that as well. So excited to see how they get on. So 15 new additions into black. Again, quite a substantial number. The aggro section is definitely one that I'm looking forward to see how it's going to end up performing. So let's find out what all of those new additions are. To start off with, we've got Delphi Horror, and this is the first of our shadow creatures in black to allow us to get through for some more damage. Its extra ability is a plus so that white shadow creatures would be able to block it either. This is a great attacker as well for potential ninjutsu triggers on top. Next up, we've got ourselves Gluttonous Slug, and again, the foil just looks so good. Modern Horizons gave us a really solid card here that could get out of hand very quickly. It really shouldn't be difficult to make this a 2/5 menace, or even a 3/6. That'll be another great attacker for us for only 2 mana. Next up, we've got Nezumi Cutthroat, and it's another one of our extremely difficult to block creatures here. This helps us to get in for damage utilising the fear mechanic rather than the shadow this time. It's unable to block, but to be fair, we don't want to do that anyway. Next up, we've got ourselves White of Precinct 6, and black has a plethora of removal spells, and this card certainly benefits a lot from that, growing in size the longer the game goes on. Certainly won't be a dead card later on in the game, that's for sure. Next up, we've got ourselves my number one common from Core Set 2020, and it just had to come in, and that was Audacious Thief. While it doesn't get the Phyrexian Rager trigger straight away, but on attack means it has the potential to get more over the course of the game if you can protect it. Next up, we've got ourselves Dalthy Marauder, and it's another aggressive shadow creature here. The 1 toughness isn't great for 3 mana, but I'm just about okay with it due to the limitations on blocking. Next up, we've got ourselves Gravedigger, and it's not the most exciting creature, although I really am happy with getting the promo there. It just looked really good that way. It's still a body that gets us one of our big threats of value back from the graveyard. Certainly ways in the cube to get more valuable from it too if you potentially can blink it or bring him back himself. Next up, we've got ourselves Blade Juggler, and this for me is a 3-drop, and in an aggressive deck, it certainly won't be hard to turn on Spectacle. If you do manage to do that, you're getting yourselves a 1 power better Phyrexian Rager, and still, it's not the worst play at 5 mana to try and find some more action. Next up, we've got ourselves Ninja of the New Moon, and I do like ninjas, I must admit, and being able to ninjutsu trigger this in for 4 mana is going to be a great play from you, and 6 damage is definitely not something to ignore. It's going to be a significant amount of damage to your opponent's life total, that's for sure. Plus the potential, depending on the creature you get in with, giving you more value when you play that as well on top, which is going to be a massive plus, and that's one of the reasons why I do like ninjas here. Next up, we've got ourselves First Sphere Gargantua, and again, the foils just look fantastic, and I think you're going to probably see this for a lot of the cards that are coming in. I did buy a lot of foils here just because I can afford common foils, that's for sure. So yeah, this is the first of our 2 bigger bodied Phyrexian Ragers here. 3 mana more for 3 power and 2 toughness on top of that Phyrexian Rager is a good deal. Plus, if you can unearth it, if it gets removed another way, you get even more value out of that creature. Next up, we've got ourselves Tithe Bearer Giant, and it's even, it's another one of those big Phyrexian Rager creatures. Granted, this time it's only got the 2 power and 3 toughness, which definitely makes it a better blocker. Your opponents will end up having a hard time trying to remove this. Moving on to the spells now, and, well, this card just had to come in. I mean, Modern Horizon's been absolutely phenomenal for this Pauper Cube, and to be fair, I'm going to assume it's good for a lot of people's Pauper Cubes as well, and Defile is just a nice piece of removal that just scales over the course of the game, and you can easily get to the point of being able to remove pretty much any threat that's in the cube with this 1 card for 1 mana, and that is an absolute bargain. Next up, we've got ourselves Snuff Out, and I like the versatility of the cost here. So you can either pay 4 life to remove your opponent's biggest threat, or later in the game when the mana cost isn't an issue, paying 4 mana to do that is perfectly acceptable. So next up, we've got Corrupt, and let me know in the comment section below which version would you prefer to see in the cube. We've got the promo version here, or we've got a foil from M14, but this is certainly a great effect that is going to do some serious work for us. So it'll deal damage equal to the number of swamps you control to target creature or player, so you can remove something, or you can get a massive life gain advantage because you're going to be gaining life equivalent to the amount of damage that's been done as well, so that could be a huge game-ending life swing. So again, let me know which version you'd like to see. And then the last card we've got is Ill-Gotten Inheritance, and this is a great effect which is certainly hard to remove, and playing in Limited, I was definitely impressed with this card. It's definitely think it can do some serious work in the cube as well. Draining an opponent each turn, giving them a clock with the activation for 4 more damage as well for the 6 mana, as you can see at the bottom there. It's just going to be a great threat onto the board, and there isn't that many ways of getting rid of enchantments in the actual cube itself, so it's going to definitely do some serious work here, and The benefit for us playing black is you're going to get that incremental life gain, so that when you're getting all of those Phyrexian Rager triggers, it's not going to be really taking it out of your health pool that much. Personally, I think these are some great changes in black, especially now that I think with all those evasive attacking creatures, they'll actually be able to get through for some damage, which is a big plus because I was struggling a little bit with the original set of kind of aggressive creatures in black. So I definitely think that that's going to be a far more powerful deck as well. Let me know as well in the comment section below, is there any cards that I've potentially missed out that you think are doing some really good work as well? I'd be really interested to find out. Red got itself a bit of an overhaul as well, especially with the aggressive creatures that are actually in this cube. So in terms of the cuts that made in red, I wanted to bring in more creatures that do a little bit more than what they were doing previously. So like Goblin Cohort and Mod Conscripts, for example, have been in the cube from the start, but I've always felt like they were placeholders for something better or at least a little bit more interesting. There have also been some upgrades for sure, and with moving Curd Ape and Burning Tree Emissary to red, it allows us to make some more explosive turns. Spells wise, not much has changed here really, and with one of the best damage suites in Pauper, there really wasn't any need to in the first place. There's been a couple of different things that have come in. For example, we've got a nice combat trick to come in, we've got another spell, and something that was on a creature that I just wanted to have an enchantment instead, and you'll see what that is coming up in the additions right now. So 18 additions in red, which is quite a big change, so let's find out what all of them are now and why I've put them in the cube. There's been a massive change to the creature base, and starting off with, we've got ourselves Fanatical Firebrand. And I like haste creatures a lot, especially to try and get in with a red aggro deck, just to try and get in for as much damage as quickly as possible. And this little 1/1 for 1 gets in for damage straight away, or it can use its sacrifice effect as well on later on in the game if you just want to be able to ping for that 1 damage. Plus, it's a great way to make combat math a little bit more difficult for opponents potentially blocking. Next up, we've got Goblin Champion, and again, forwarders look so nice. And again, this is another one of those hasty creatures, and having access to Exalted in red is a real positive here. Turn 1, it attacks as a 1/2, and has the potential on a big board state to make one of your smaller creatures an even bigger threat. Next up, we've got ourselves Goblin Motivator, and while it may not have haste itself, being able to give haste to one of your bigger threats when it enters the battlefield to attack on the turn it comes in is absolutely great for me. Bloodlust Inciter has done some really good work in the cube, and so a second one of those is definitely appreciated. Next up, we've got one of the first Spells Matters creatures finding its home in the cube, and that is Burning Prophet. The 1/3 body which pumps up on non-creature spells makes it a solid attacker and blocker, and it also then makes combat math more challenging for the opponent. What I really do like about this card is the added scry to each of those spells as well, really allowing us to improve our draws each turn. And then we've got ourselves the second one of these cards, and it's an aggressive version of a Spells Matter kind of card. Thermo Alchemist was pretty much in this spot previously, but that has now been taken out because for me, due to activating on more spell types, this can also attack in as well to get more damage on an empty board state. It's just going to be doing more over the course of the game. Next up, we've got ourselves Mog Flunkies, and getting a 3/3 for 2 is great value here, even if it can't attack or block alone, and let's face it, in a red aggro deck, that wouldn't be a problem anyway. Next up, we've got ourselves Orcish Hellraiser, and this just gives us another Keldon Marauders variant, which you can choose to keep for as long as you want with the Echo cost. It's a great blocker due to dealing 2 damage when it dies to the opponent, and 3 power can deal with a lot of creatures. If it ends up coming in on an empty board, you won't mind paying that 1 to be able to swing in and do the 3 damage each turn. Next up, we've got ourselves Viashino Pyromancer, and dealing 2 damage when entering the battlefield helps guarantee that this creature will at least do something decent enough to swing in with and use as a blocker. Bounce and Flickering this for sure will do some significantly more damage and make it even more valuable. Next up, we've got another one of my favourite cards from Core Set 2020, and that is Goblin Smuggler. While a 2/2 haste creature for 3 can certainly do some work on an empty board, its ability to make something unblockable is the key factor that's getting it into this cube. Especially with Exalted and Ninjutsu triggers, a card draw on player damage, and the ability to pump spells on. It just means that that creature you get through unblockable, it can do some serious work for us. Next up, we've got ourselves one of the cards that I'm putting in to kind of test out more than is definitely going to be a slam dunk and staying here for a while, and that is Viashino Sand Sprinter. Modern Horizons has given us a mini ball lightning for 3, and while 4-1 instead of 6-1, it's not having to sacrifice at the end of the turn, but rather return it to your hand, which means we can get some more value out of it if it survives. Plus, if you need to find some more action, you can always cycle it away. Next up, we've got ourselves Voyuk Bodyguard. A 3-3 for 3 isn't the worst stats, even if it can't attack or block alone. Again, not a problem for a red aggro deck. The mental trigger is worth the extra 1 mana over Mog Flunkies in my opinion. This can really help power up your force, as a fair amount of your creatures will have less power or toughness than this 3-3. Next up, we've got Keldon Raider, and it's a 4-3 for 4 with the ability to discard an unwanted card to try and draw some more gas. Is pretty useful at the top end of red, especially as you won't typically need a huge amount of mana. Next up, we've got Wildfire Elemental, and to be fair, the more I've looked at this, the higher I've got on this card. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's from the Planeswalker decks from Quartet 2020, and the only issue for players here because being able to get hold of them, but it's a really, really solid card. The 3-3 body for 4 is okay, but its battle cry effect for each of your creatures when you burn your opponent can certainly add up and make for some really explosive combat steps. Next up, we've got ourselves a Quakefoot Cyclops, and again, it gives us another creature to get us through for a big attack. Being able to take out 2 defending creatures of your choice from blocking could potentially be game-winning. Worst case, you can always cycle this card away to find a needed piece of removal and still take out an opponent's creature from blocking to get in. Pretty versatile, yeah? And last of all of the creatures, we've got ourselves Sprinting Warbrute. A 5-4 for 5 that attacks each turn is a good enough curve topper for red. Realistically, I wouldn't see an issue with the dash costing him in regularly to get a large chunk of damage in, rather than actually paying the full mana cost here. Moving on to the spells, and there wasn't a significant amount of changes here, but I just wanted to add a couple more cards in. So Run Amok here is the first one. Being able to give a creature +3/+3 and trample for 2 mana is a nice little combat trick that it can either get through for even more damage, take out a creature and still provide damage on top, or just really just taking your opponent out of the game. So it's a perfect little combat trick for us in red. I know what you're probably going to say, this isn't a red card, it's an Izzet card, what are you doing? For me, it's the fire aspect of this card is the reason I've put it in here, and that's the why I'm putting it into the cube. 2 mana for a 2 damage that you can split if you'd like is good enough for me to make the cut, and to be perfectly honest, I don't see an issue with potentially having it into an Izzet deck as well. I just wanted to have it in the red slot because the fire aspect of it I think is going to be getting more work. And last of all, we've got ourselves a Fire Whip, and again, it's just a nice foil of the old school. It doesn't kind of shine as much as the blue one, but it still looks really cool. And this is an interesting enchantment for me that I wanted to bring in. Volshock Sorcerer is a card that I really enjoyed in the cube, but the 1/1 body was my biggest issue with it. It just didn't last very long. Being able to put this on a more resilient body was definitely the plan with this card. Plus, if it was in the process of being removed, you can always sacrifice this enchantment to get that extra piece of damage in as well. So lots of exciting cards there, as you can probably see, and the added benefit here is I can really see red aggro being even better. So green has got itself a massive change in this edition of the Cube update, and realistically it was an archetype change as well. Green aggro just wasn't performing, and as you'll see on the list there, loads of cards have been taken out from it because it just wasn't doing the trick. It couldn't compete with black, red and white in terms of an aggressive style deck, and it just wasn't being picked. So we went back to the drawing board there and actually put in a mid-range and ramp as being the 2 main decks there for green, just so that they've got something that just works. It's what green's good at, it's what everybody knows green to be, and why change a winning formula. Ramp wise, I wanted to put the actual ramp into enchantments rather than spells, hence the removal of Cultivate and Kadama's Reach, just because I wanted to help that green-white kind of enchantments deck that we've got going on in the archetype. And realistically, one of the spells that I have put in, I just think it's a better overall spell for green at any point in the game as well. So very excited to see how that gets on in all the changes, which you'll see right now. So as you probably can tell, green was the biggest of all of the updates with 19 new cards in there because of really changing up the way the archetype goes. So getting away from that aggro into mid-range. So let's see what all of the new cards are that I'm very excited to see how green now performs. So to start off with, we've got ourselves Findorn Elves, and I definitely wanted to grab another Mana Dork alongside Arbor Elf and Llanowar Elves, and this was 100% the obvious choice to have. Plus, it's just the nice foil version from the vault, and it was just, you know, we needed another Mana Dork in. Perfect choice there. Next up, we've got ourselves Aura Gnarlid, and with the amount of auras available in green-white now, I certainly think there won't be much that will be able to block this as the board state develops. Next up, we've got Byway Courier, and this is from all the way back from Shadows over Innistrad. A decent 3/2 attacking or blocking creature that gives you a clue token when it dies. I mean, it's not quite replacing itself straight away, but it's almost there. Next up, we've got Sporecap Spider, and for me, it's just a nice defensive blocking body. A 1/5 for 3 is decent enough stats, especially with the number of flyers that have kind of got itself into this cube as well. So green needs a way of defending itself, and this is a great way to do that. Next up, we've got Tishana's Wayfinder, and again, the foils just look so nice. I think that's the best thing about having them all in the post, was just going, oh god, these foils look so good every single day when they were coming in for this massive cube update. So with Tishana's Wayfinder, I really like the explore mechanic, and this can either be a 2/2 that gets you a land, or a 3/3 that shows your opponent the upcoming card, or you can use it to fill your graveyard if you don't want it. Definitely good value here and fits into a lot of different archetypes. Next up, we've got ourselves Trusted Force Mage, and I like the Soulbound mechanic, and it just means it gives you 4 power and 4 toughness for the 3 mana, which is definitely good value, with one of each of those power and toughness being actually on another creature as well. So being able to make one of your bigger creatures even bigger sounds perfectly reasonable to me. Next up, we've got Villagers of Estvold, and this is just a good 2/3 for 3 that just transforms fairly easily into a 4/6, which can be good value here. And green typically, especially with the way that the deck's going, it won't be casting 2 spells a turn, so you're going to end up having a really big creature for a long period of time as well. Next up, we've got ourselves Conifer Strider, and again, this is just a big glass cannon in green. Being hexproof certainly makes up for the 1 toughness, so if you can give any of the enchantments onto it or any pump spells, this is definitely going to do some serious work for us. So next up, we've got ourselves Silverback Shaman. Again, this is another one of the Core Set 2020 inclusions here that I really like. The 4 toughness is definitely made up for the fact that it replaces itself when it dies. 5 power with trample, certainly good for me. Next up, we've got ourselves Rocks Maulers, and this is one of my favourite cards from the first ever Magic set that I played. I mean, the Origins when I got into Magic, and I really did like this card. So, 4/4 trample for 5 isn't great stats initially, but after 1 attack phase, you should be able to get that Renown trigger, making it a 6/6, and then it's just an absolutely beast of a beater. Next up, we've got ourselves Stampeding Elk Herd, and the 5/5 for 5 isn't bad stats, and the Formidable trigger here really shouldn't be very difficult to achieve in green at all. Giving every single one of your creatures trample by just getting 3 more toughness on the board really could be the point of time where you actually end up winning the game. And next up, we've got ourselves Excavating Anurid, and here you've got ourselves a 4/4 for 5, which if you have excess land, you can sacrifice 1 to draw yourself a card. I mean, it shouldn't be difficult from green to get yourself extra lands, that's for sure. Plus, sacrificing of a land is what you can do to fill your graveyard to help hit that threshold to make it a 5/5 vigilance, which makes it even more value here. Next up, we've got ourselves Citadel Woodreaders, and you may be thinking, well, that's a 3-drop. For me, it's not. I'm treating it as a 6. Yes, you can play it for 3 for giving yourself a 1/4 defender, which is pretty bad stats in my opinion. That's kind of if you're pretty desperate. For me, what you're doing here is just playing the 6 mana with that kicker cost there. So you're getting a 1/4 body to help kind of defend a bit, and enters the battlefield, get yourself 2 cards as well. That for me is good value. 1/4 with 2 cards. I'll pay 6 for that. And then the last of the creatures here is Wrecking Beast, and it's just a big curve topper here. For 7 mana, you're getting yourself a 6/6 with trample and riot as well. And I really do like the riot mechanic. It just means that you've got the versatility to do what you need to do at a certain time on the board present. So if you want it to be a 6/6 with trample swinging on the turn it comes in, yep, great, you can do that and give it haste. Or you can make it a 7/7 trample instead if the board state requires it, and I really do like that. Moving on into the spells now, we've got, first up, we've got Edge of Autumn. I mean, again, foiling just looks so nice. And for me, this is a more versatile ramp spell in green. We can either ramp for a basic land if we meet the conditions, i.e. actually when we actually need the land, else we can sacrifice a land and cycle this away to draw more action. So this is great for when we're flooded and we don't need any more lands, and it's certainly not a dead card at any point of the game. Next up, we've got ourselves Winding Way, and this has definitely made an impact in Pauper in the actual constructed format, so I kind of wanted to test it to put it into the cube and see how it ends up doing. So we've either got ourselves a great ramp spell here, or a way to refuel your hand with creatures if you need them. Again, it shouldn't be a dead card and can fuel your graveyard too. Next up, we've got ourselves Trumpeting Herd, and this was pretty straightforward. Getting yourselves 2 3/3 tokens over 2 turns for 4 mana is an absolute bargain. Absolute slam dunk there. And on to the enchantments now for the way that we're actually going to be ramping up. And first up is Wild Growth. So 1 mana to make one of your lands tap for 2 is definitely good enough for me. Plus it definitely helps that green-white enchantment deck make it even better. Next up, we've got a pretty old card here in the form of Gaia's Touch, and it's another enchantment that helps us ramp if we need it, plus you can always sacrifice it to get 2 mana to bring out something even bigger earlier as well. Certainly a positive over your typical Cultivate and Kadama's Reach, that's for sure. And last of all, we've got ourselves Overgrowth, and this is just taking Wild Growth and up to another level, really. You get to actually tap for 2 extra mana instead of 1, and it can really make for some explosive turns if you can kind of sequence these events out as well in your deck. So with all those changes, I certainly think green's going to be a far more viable colour to pick in the draft. Again, it was quite disheartening for trying to get green aggro to work, and I've tried so many different cards to try different things out to see if I could get it to just work, and it just wasn't being picked. It just wasn't good enough. It just didn't have the right tools to really push through for the damage. Yes, you could end up being Gruul aggro, and that was just about okay, but for the most part, people just ignored it. When they drafted, they just went, no, green aggro is not good enough. So making it now mid-range just means that I've got something I can work with here that people might actually just typically go, yeah, you know what, I just fancy getting big green dumb creatures that just smash in for a load of damage. And there's a lot of really interesting different cards in there that'll end up pushing through for that bit of damage. So excited to see how it ends up playing and if more people end up choosing it as well. So last of the major kind of additions to the cube, we've got the multicolored cards here now, and with all the changes to the different colour pie sections and whatnot, I just needed to actually level out all of those guilds and also make a few changes in there as well for cards that actually suit what I'm doing in the cube now more than what I did back then. So let's find out what all the changes are. So onto the multicolored cards now, and we're going to be starting off with Inzurius, and we've got ourselves Silver Drake. So we've got another big good creature here for the blue-white flyers deck, and this is definitely Azorius' version of Core Skyfisher. For 1 more mana, you get yourself 1 extra power, plus being able to bounce a value creature back from to your hand and then play it again is a big plus. Next up, we're moving to the Dimir Guild for Consult the Necrosages, and I really do like the versatility of the card to either refuel your hand or really disrupt your opponent. Exactly what Dimir wants to do. On to Gruul now, and we've got ourselves Granger Guildmage. Now, we've got a versatile creature here where the majority of the work will become from paying that 1 red to be dealing damage to both your opponent and yourself, which is definitely a race I'm sure we're more likely to win in a Gruul aggressive deck. Second of the changes in Gruul is Frenzied Arynx, and we've got ourselves a really good card here for 4 mana. Either it's going to be a 3/3 trample body for 4, which you can haste in straight away to deal damage as soon as possible, or you can always bring it as a 4/4 trample as well. The added benefit here is that you can pump into it later when you've got extra mana to push through for that final bit of damage. It's perfectly good for any type of board state. Next up, we're going to the Celestia Guild, and we've got ourselves a Pale Recluse. Now, again, with the number of flyers being added in, certainly had no issues of putting this kind of versatile creature in here. A 4/5 with reach is going to be able to block pretty much everything, but the positive here is that we've got ourselves forest and plain cycling in there as well, if we ever really needed to find ourselves some mana. Next up, we're going to the Golgari Guild, and we've got Undercity Uprising again. Just really loving the look of some of these foils. This is a card I like for a couple of reasons. It's a piece of removal where you can easily trade up, so one of your 1/1s can just be flung at one of their biggest creatures. Because it's got Death Touch, it's going to kill it off, which is absolutely fantastic. Plus, if you have a decent sized board presence, you could end up swinging in for lethal, giving all of your creatures Death Touch. Really does make blocking difficult for your opponent as well. Onto Orzhov, and we've got ourselves Grasping Thrall, and this is, again, one of the cards I like in Orzhov. Draining when it enters the battlefield on a 3/3 evasive creature is great for 5, and manage to get some blink spells in, and you're going to be doing some serious work with this card. Really, really do like it. And last of all, we've got ourselves Goblin Electromancer. So I ended up swapping out Izzet Chronarch due to adding Mnemonic Wall in blue, allowing me to get a cheaper creature into the guild, which will do more work over time. 1 mana less for each instant and sorcery card in Cube can certainly add up over time. If you can keep him on the board, he'll definitely be doing some serious work. So there we have the 70 plus changes that have come into this cube, and if you've managed to get this far in the video, fair play to you, deserve a pat on the back, that's for sure. Let me know in the comment section below as well, if you just type the word made it, if you actually managed to get this far as well. It'd be really interesting to see how many people actually managed to get here. And yeah, I'm very excited to see how the cube's going to perform. From the initial testing that I've done alongside Cube Tutor drafts, and some of my community members as well have actually done as well, it looks really good. There's some really cool decks that are being built, and again, thank you to Derek as well, who's done, I don't even know how many drafts that he's put out on Cube Tutor. I think he's done at least 10, which is absolutely phenomenal. And if you want to do the same, there'll be a link in the description as well below for you, so you can kind of check out what the new cube's like and just give me an example of what kind of decks are being built as well. It'd be really helpful to see what things are working, what things aren't. So, I know whether you like the way the changes are and if it's actually matching up to my expectations. That'd be really great help if you could do that as well. And if there's any cards that I've missed out from any of the new sets, or ones you're thinking maybe would end up being better than what I've got in there, again, let me know in the comment section as well below, because I'd be very interested to see what your thoughts are there as well. And if you're building a Pauper Cube and you're following along and you like some of the cards that have been put in there, definitely do have, let me know and put them into the Cube Tutor as well, and give me some links as well in the comment section below, because I'd be interested to see how your cube's developed over the past 7 sets, because if it's anything like what mine has, you've got some really cool cards coming in. If you want to discuss more, there's also my Discord link that I've reopened again. That'll be in the description as well below, so you can come and chat on there and get to know various community members a bit more as well, because that'd be so much fun to actually be able to do. And yeah, I'm just excited for the new sets going forward now. Hopefully I never have to do another update that's got 70 odd cards, because it was quite difficult to cut some of those cards, I must admit, to try and fit everything in. There was some very good cards that have come out and some really, really good cards that have come in, so I'm excited to see where this is going, and just the format as well, because there's been some really, like Modern Horizons, I need to go back and actually do that video of the top number of cards, but if it's anything to go by what I put in my cube, everybody got a treat with that. Everyone did with that set. It's phenomenal. So definitely make sure you stay tuned for that as well. I'll be working on that over the course of a week off I've got now to try and get you that out before I then go back to work. So that'll be the next video to come out, and I'm very excited about doing that because Modern Horizons was absolutely fantastic. So again, I hope everybody enjoyed the video and managed to stay with me this entire time. It's been a bit of a long one, I must admit, but there is a lot of information in there. And you can always check out the website as well, www.lifebegins20.co.uk, for a written version of this update as well, so you can see everything there, see all the cards and refer back to it. That'd be a great way to do it. And also, you get to see all of the other content that I've catalogued and put onto that website for you as well. So you've got a home there for all of the cube content that you'll probably need to actually start building and making your cubes. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you hit that like button and the subscribe button below so you don't miss out on any of my future content. And if you want to follow me on any of my social media links, they are below in the description there, so you can chat with me outside of YouTube as well. It'd be great to get to know more of you and actually build this cube community up as well, because that's something I really want to do going forward. So again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.